Hello everyone, this is the Muffin here, and today we are going to get inside the mind of an actual tank commander. Watch as he plays a few games and goes through his strategy and walks us through his process of what he learned during his time in service, but in Gaijin simulative gaming experience in War Thunder, along with going over some questions you have all sent in. Now, how we got connected was I actually came across his new YouTube channel he just started not too long ago. Congrats, by the way, Panzer. Link below, and go subscribe to his channel. He's got some great content coming out, so check that out over there. So now tell us what you can in regards to your tank commander background, what type of tank you drove, and a little bit about your resume for the audience watching today, and what might be cool to mention before we jump in.
Okay, well, hi, my name is Panzer, or Panzerpaw, and I was previously in the Singapore Army for 4 years as a tank commander on the Leopard 2 A4 and then later the upgraded L2SG.
That's awesome. I came across your vid of when you were testing War Thunder a little bit. Sounds like you have some experience with War Thunder. Is that right?
Well, yeah, I actually played way back when it was just World War II planes. And so I kind of just played it because, well, flying around planes was fun. And then they added tanks, and I didn't really get back into it until a couple months ago or so properly.
That's awesome. Now, and I know on your channel you play a variety of different games, but the video I watched, I saw you come across like a mid 1930s BT tank when you were in a higher tier battle, like in your Leopard, and it shocked you, right?
Yeah, I was quite surprised at that because I know some people take lower tier vehicles like biplanes into top tier jets and stuff like that. I just never expect to see it myself, or let alone when I'm actually recording a video that, yeah, suddenly you see just BT-5, amongst all the Abramses and Leopards.
In your training, you probably have to prepare for uncertain circumstances. Maybe not like the BT, but something you're not expecting, right?
Well, definitely. So we do have a lot of training drills, which are all sort of the baseline for what you would train to do. For example, engaging a tank or engaging an APC. But we're always taught to adapt the drill to the situation and, of course, read the situation on the ground. So what you tend to end up having is just those situations where, okay, you got two tanks to engage. Which one do you pick first? You'll pick the one that does something that's more dangerous to you, but we always change the scenario around where enemies can appear in unexpected locations or behave in ways that you don't expect to kind of throw you off, just to kind of keep the commander on their toes and deciding how they're going to react to that situation.
Now, the vehicle in War Thunder that's closest to the one you commanded is the Leopard 2A4, is that right?
Yes, that's still the base vehicle that the L2SG is built on.
And I thought what might be fun to do as well is, I think in the video I had watched you were doing realistic mode. Do you think you could do this in simulator mode?
So I've had a lot of people ask me about that, and I'm keen to try it. I've only done simulator for air battles before, and it didn't go well. So I'm interested to see how the ground battles are different.
But I think we could go ahead, dive into some gameplay. I think we're squatted up in War Thunder right now.
Yep.
Before diving into some games, I'm pretty sure there is a lot that goes into preparing and what happens before an engagement takes place. Help me understand, like, are there satellite images taken? Do you know roughly how many vehicles you're encountering? I'm guessing there's like a plan of attack that's in play that you probably have to follow. What is all happening behind the scenes before an actual battle happens?
So before any major engagement, we're talking like from the big strategic level. Of course, there's intelligence, there's planning, all of that happens. And so for the commanders on the ground, we are given the information as it comes. So before you even enter a conflict, okay, roughly your enemy strength is going to be this amount. They've got certain number of divisions, how many of them are armored, how many are infantry, and so on. So you kind of know roughly what they can throw at you. And then, of course, when you go into each area of operations, then, okay, we know the enemy may have deployed this division to this area. And we know that the strength of that division as of whatever time that information was collected. So we have some idea of what we're going to be facing and in what numbers, but always the situation on the ground can change. The enemy may reinforce their units with other units from different areas that we may not have seen coming, and so we just have to adapt to the situation as it comes.
See how this works out.
So one of the most common questions I get as well on that War Thunder video I did was, why do you not use the laser rangefinder?
Oh, okay.
Because I don't very often, or use thermals. Um, so the laser rangefinder, or rangefinding in general, below 1,000 meters is actually not relevant.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Because in the actual tank, we don't do that either.
Oh, funny.
So the laser rangefinder, you would use that for anything that's beyond, let's say, 1,200 meters, and you can measure that using your reticle. So if the tank is about the same size as your entire reticle, they're closer than 1,000 meters. You don't need to range that. And also, yeah, the DM33 ammo, or in this case the DM23, it has a very flat trajectory. So if the round's going to hit everything in a straight line up to 1,000 meters, why do you need to laze it?
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's
So
funny.
here's something you can't do in real life. I'm peeking over a fence using third-person camera.
No, that's true.
The other one is thermals. Thermals in games don't work like they do in real life.
Oh, yeah.
At all. So let me just go into thermals here. I'm narrating it because I know you can't see it.
Yeah, no worries.
So the thermal view is blocked by a lot of things like leaves and grass because the game engine sees those as actual objects. And all it's doing is highlighting the model. But in the actual thermal image... Oh, where did that shot come from?
I didn't even see that one either.
Yeah, I didn't see him either. Okay, he's straight ahead of me somewhere. I'm gonna just drop Artie on that corner. No. Oh, it's a striker. I was looking for a tank shape. Oh wow, he's so well hidden. You can literally only see the top of his cupola.
Holy cow. That
Yeah,
was
he was
crazy.
so well hidden. I was looking right at him. But there you go, limitation of thermals too. So I have a backup vehicle, I'm just gonna use it.
That you just use it. Yeah. We'll just kind of see what we can do.
But so yeah, thin objects such as wood or like little leaves, paper, that sort of thing, it's not going to stop infrared or heat signatures from being seen at all. In fact, if you lean against a concrete wall that's maybe 30-40 centimeters thick, the residual heat from your body is going to make you visible.
Oh, wow.
We've tested this. I was able to spot a machine gun nest behind a door because you could see him plain as day.
Wow. That's
Porous
crazy.
materials will allow heat to travel through it. So because the thermal imager is sensitive enough to pick up less than a degree Celsius in temperature difference, you'll see that very clearly, and it's what makes spotting troops very easy. Yeah, I think it should be able to see through thin materials. Like right now, if I switch to thermals, I still see the hedgerow in front of me. You would be able to see the outline of that, but if somebody's behind it, that's not a thing you would be able to hide behind. I think if they were to change it, though, a lot of people would complain that concealment becomes ineffective, and I hate to burst your bubble, but that is realistic.
Do you try to avoid those in real life situations, or is night preferred, or how does that work?
Generally speaking, we preferred night just because we had the capability of fighting it.
Dude, did your tank have this camo netting? Like, did you have a lot of the similar stuff you had kind of put on your tank in real life?
So the style of the camo net is definitely something we did have. This particular style, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a particular style or design of camo net. We didn't have the form-fitting one though. We had one that you put up as a kind of like a tent.
Oh,
So it
okay.
breaks up the shape of the tank very well.
Oh, yeah.
And you use that more for overnight stops.
Okay.
So if you have to hide the vehicle, mainly from aircraft, And it was quite effective at doing that.
You had used smoke grenades actually just before dying. Is smoke grenade something used in real life more as something to... Because in War Thunder, you use smoke grenades to hopefully evade a situation or repair within 40 seconds or so. But in smoke grenades, is it more of a way to like kind of help blind the enemy so you and your crew can escape? Or what is kind of the purpose of why real life tankers use smoke grenades?
Well, it is used for concealment, definitely. The situations can vary. As for escaping under fire, you don't want to get out of your tank even with smoke concealing you, because concealment is not cover.
Yeah.
Smoke's not going to block a bullet. So, yeah, you want to use it to conceal the tank, especially when changing positions.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
Oh, that's SU-25 just did a rocket attack in front of me. That's one situation where you would want to use smoke. Enemy strafing runs from aircraft. You mainly want to get out of the line of fire. So if they're going straight at you, you want to go left or right to avoid it. But you don't want to just do that because they'll just follow you. So using smoke to conceal that direction change can be very useful. Same for when I got attacked by the striker. If he had missed me and I didn't know where the shot came from, I would have popped smoke and backed up really quick. Which the Leopard's very good at doing. It has a very good reverse speed.
Like, we don't have the third-person camera, so how do you know you're safe either coming around a corner?
I actually talked about this before on a stream when somebody asked me exactly this question. So the Leopard's sight is on the right side of the turret, so you want to prioritize directions that you can use with your primary sight. You don't want to be blindsided, so to speak. So if you're coming around a corner going on a right-hand corner, your sight is going to be the last thing that appears after your turret and your gun. So when I'm approaching this corner, what you're going to see on the other side is you're going to see the whole front of the tank before I can see with my sights around the corner. So you want to prioritize left-hand turns instead, where the tank can be a little bit more concealed. But at the same time, there are other tactics. For example, if there's not likely to be enemy in the area, you could get you and your loader dismounting and go and have a peek in person first. That's another possibility. We've done all sorts of things. Like standing up on top of the turret with your binoculars is another option, because they're less likely to see somebody's head sticking up above a ridgeline than a whole turret. So that's a possibility too. Or going around corners, actually. One time I held onto the infantry railing on the front of the turret. It's camouflaged by the net, but there's actually a railing underneath the sight there. And I held onto that and just got the tank to drive forward so I could look with my head around the corner. That's a possibility too. You're exposing yourself quite a bit, but end of the day, what can you do, right?
We'll just do a couple, and
yeah, that map was not very conducive for that, because that's exactly the situation where I talk about avoiding it, so tactics in there are a little bit limited. Yeah, Sun City's not the greatest. This one's okay, though. I don't have the right camo for it, but this one's okay. Yeah, El Alamein has a lot of ridgeline, so I can talk about that, I think. I've got a couple of little elevations here. In fact, there was one point near Charlie that, if you look at sort of Bravo 8, that square that's just off the edge of the map, it's actually a perfect Leopard sniping position. Because it's exactly everything you need, and the Leopard can make it up there. I'm going to try to get up there.
yeah.
Because, yeah, you can see all the way from the passage around the side of Sea Point.
Oh.
And, yeah, normally in the sort of lower BRs, you get all the little pumas and stuff going up there.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one that you can't hit them because they're so annoying, so you need a plane to remove them. So, yeah, the Leopard can do that. So I'm going to try to get there.
Okay.
So this right here is a dangerous position. Going in between these sort of high positions and you're in this low valley, it's definitely a very dangerous place for a tank.
That high ground advantage, kind of like we were talking about earlier.
Yes, so you're vulnerable to that, and the roof of your turret is not very thick. So somebody dropping an IED from a cliff face could be very dangerous to you as well.
Oh
It's one of the
yeah.
reasons that urban operations are so difficult as well, because rooftops, we can't get our gun up that high. Ooh, oh, okay. I
Oh.
wasn't paying attention. So somebody else is watching that spot. Somebody knows. They know that spot. Okay, I'll take a different position. So there are two spots near C that are good for that. So I'm gonna take the other one. I'm gonna go to the low point first. I think that 2K is going where I was talking about too, though.
Yeah.
And
Well,
he died.
and that was
He died to the same guy.
well, this is a situation where War Thunder is kind of putting you in a bad situation right at the beginning in this valley, and you're trying to get out of it.
Yes.
So
And we don't want to be anywhere where you call them kill zones, you know, like where you're likely to be ambushed or where you could take a lot of damage from being ambushed.
yeah.
Deserts in general they have good sight lines, but sand is easy to bury things in. So, you know, hidden mines and things like that can be a problem too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, makes sense. So
Okay, so right over here on the left, there's a little sort of ridge line with these rocks that I try to use sometimes.
okay.
Uh,
And this is kind of something, if this was a real life situation, this is kind of something you would look for.
yeah, so in this position, what I would actually do is either use my commander sight or binoculars to look over the ridge. And when you look at it, the tank's not exposed.
Yeah.
Not from over the ridge, but I can see just over it. So what I will do is I put my binoculars over the ridge and then go up and look. I have a little peek. And so far, nothing there yet. There's a shot from over there, so I'm going to relocate. And I'm going to keep watching that side there. It's going to back up behind this rock here. So this is what you would call an observation position, where you can see but can't shoot. Also known as turret down. So the turret's also hidden.
Yeah, makes sense. Pretty good position here because you kind of almost have that higher ground advantage. You've got the rocks as protection right in front of you. Yeah,
Yep.
it makes sense.
And also, if I need to, I can push up over here and peek out over that way too, to that little sort of crevice in the rocks there that they go through.
Yeah.
So anyone moving on from C, rotating to B, I would be able to see that. But of course, if you're up on the cliff over there where the 2K was going, you can see all the way down past the castle to the left here too.
Oh,
So that's a
interesting.
really, really nice spot.
So
So I
now,
rotate between these two spots here.
yeah, and I'm curious because with you having teammates in front of you, it doesn't. Yeah, and over to the right, and it looks like to the left. Let's see, is that a plane? Oh yeah, that's a plane. Um, Having ground units in front of you, is this kind of a cue of, oh, maybe I can move up, or should I move over to the right, or or do you stay here?
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes, so for this, where they are on C, I can't support them there, but I can stop them from being flanked from over on the right here. So if somebody was over there, they might rotate down this way, or they might try to get them in the back. So you can see there's a shot from over on the cliff there.
Yes.
I can see that. I can shoot at that. I'm gonna laze it. There we go.
Oh, beautiful.
So I didn't need to laze that one. It was 500 meters, but yeah. That's typically what you would want to do. So I can see him from this position right here in my observation position. I move up into the firing position, exposing as little as possible. Because yeah, from this position here, it's only my gun and the top of the turret that's actually visible to the guy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, that's the sort of key, is as little as possible as being exposed. So
Yeah, good overarching position. And how long, or what would you look for in terms of, okay, now it's safe to move up or move to a different position?
So yeah, definitely where the team is. would be a good way of looking at it. Like, I can see C is being taken right now. So I know, okay, somebody's there, but somebody may be looking over from where I shot at before. You don't want to peek the same position twice. That's definitely one of the main things. Both in the game and in real life, you always change positions, even if you didn't shoot.
Oh, really?
So we have something called a 20-second rule. When you start moving into a firing position, the driver will count down from 20. Once you hit 20, he calls 20 seconds up, and the commander has to decide what to do, because that's the average amount of time that's required for somebody to spot you, acquire, and engage. So we've got spotting markings over there. Looks like he's engaging our Huey. So now the Huey's down, he's going to try and push it, maybe. So I want to keep an eye on that. My gun's a little bit visible. A little bit. But the chances of somebody seeing that?
Yeah. Yeah,
But so
no.
once the 20 seconds up is called, you change position. You do what's known as a U-shape or V-shape maneuver, which looks a little bit like this. So I fire off here, and then I'll move, okay, back, and then adjacent position over here. This is a little bit close, but just for demonstration.
Yeah.
But yeah, you would have pre-planned a few different positions, and you just swap between them.
So that'd probably be a good
Um,
tactic in War Thunder, kind of that 20 seconds. Like, gotta move. I think that's kind of why I get killed so much. Sometimes I come over a ridge line, I see a bunch of targets, and I'm like, I can't help myself. I have to get them all. And so I'll stay there
Yeah,
and
so
then
you don't
keep.
want to continuously shoot because you notice how visible a shot actually is. Like I spotted that I think it was an XM1 or a Puma that I shot at earlier because of the muzzle blast, not because I saw him first.
Yeah.
I believe that is somebody over there too. I'm just gonna have a look. That was the dead one. I could
Yeah.
have sworn I just saw somebody.
Now, when you're in a combat situation, I know in War Thunder, kind of talked about this earlier with planes and ground vehicles all being together. Do the tank commanders ever talk to those in the air? And vice versa?
Sometimes, well, what we typically do, it depends on the situation. There's always a hierarchy and a chain of command to follow. So, in some contexts, as an example, a platoon commander could put in a request for air support. That goes to the forward air controller, or FAC, and he would task available air assets to you. So that will come from top down.
Oh, gotcha.
So we can request it, but we don't talk to them directly outside of a necessity, like in the case of a ground designation being given. So, oh, that's artillery right in front of me.
Uh-oh.
I just saw that land. What was that?
Oh, someone's
Where did you
behind
come
you.
from? Oh, wow.
Wow.
How did he get there? Because I was watching that spot for so long, and he wasn't there.
That's
He is
crazy.
sneaky.
Because in your
That was
tactics,
sneaky.
yeah, in your tactics, your team was up. So, like, it made sense for you to move up. And then it
Yeah.
looked like it was clear, but then he all of a sudden came back from behind you. So, in a real life situation, like, how would that have been avoided, or could that actually happen?
So the way that we avoid this in real life is something called bounding overwatch. Same thing that infantry carry out, moving from bound to bound. Tanks do exactly the same thing. So from that firing position, I may have my alpha or which is the platoon second in command, my alpha tank covering me while I move forward. Then I cover the forward position while they move. So you go
Oh,
bound by bound like that.
gotcha.
Um, that's how that would have been avoided. In a single tank context, I looked in the direction that the guy would have likely came from, but I might have missed it. So if I miss it, the guy behind me is going to be able to see that. So that's
Oh,
kind of what you need is somebody watching your back for that. Which, yeah, in War Thunder you may not always get. Although I
yeah,
think that battle really well illustrated just that hull down tactics as a leopard is amazing at doing. So
yeah.
that's kind of the best way of doing that. I have noticed though, just comparing real life to War Thunder, is a tactic a lot of players use is that if they've been shot at but not disabled, they pop the smoke and just stay there, which leads to them being shot at more. Um, You don't do that in real life. You probably shouldn't do that in the game anyway. It's like you use the smoke to relocate. Don't sit in your smoke. Also, in real life, those smokes are they're chemical smoke grenades. You don't want to be breathing that stuff in.
Is it a type of smoke that kind of helps thermals or heat not see you?
It's a I can't remember what's in it. It's a very hot burning chemical, so it can kind of work against thermals because of the thermal difference. It can kind of do that. In training, we've not actually tested this, but I believe it does screen you against thermals just by being really hot smoke. So, yeah, like it's actually quite pretty looking. Because it's an airburst smoke grenade, so it pops and looks like white fireworks, and then it comes down like a curtain. It's
Oh,
quite pretty to look at.
crazy. That is cool.
Yeah, and it can screen 2 tanks widths in front of it very like instantly.
And does it last as long as it does in game?
Longer,
Oh,
slightly.
wow. Okay.
I think
Interesting.
in game it's just for balancing reasons, but you have a good like 30 seconds of good smoke cover, and then I would say another 30 seconds or so of like medium smoke cover where they might be able to see through it with certain optics. So
Oh.
you got like a minute or so to get out of there. And the other thing as well is just that compared to the game, you have to kind of simulate situational awareness in a game.
Yeah.
From the third person camera to the sounds, even just the pixels in a distance, due to War Thunder's anti-aliasing.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, it's a struggle to see targets, but I never had that problem on the actual tank. Either in my binos or just with my eyes, and I don't have the best eyes. I could still see targets very easily. Something the game doesn't do very well.
Now, was there things that before you were a tank commander, that when going in and then actually being a tank commander, that you were like, oh wow, that like blew my mind. I had no idea that's actually how it's supposed to be. Was there any things like that?
I think for me, the most eye-opening thing was the fact that, being taught that armor doesn't save you.
Oh.
Like, don't be reliant on it. Rely on good tactics to not get hit, was the main thing. Because, yeah, we see tanks in movies and TV and all that as just being this, like, world-ending thing that can deflect bullets forever. And that's true against small arms, but in the modern context, most people aren't dumb enough to shoot a rifle at a tank. Um, they don't do that. They'll pick up an RPG instead, which yeah, games also don't get right. RPGs are not that dangerous against tanks. Not really.
Oh.
Um,
Okay.
they can damage certain external equipment, but they're not going to pierce the armor. You need actual shape charges and things like that to do that job. So
Interesting.
yeah, they're more effective in games than they are in real life.
So now here in this, I did see we went high ground first, kind of went to that overlooking position. Now this probably could be dangerous because you got the middle. Now I haven't played this map before, but
I hadn't either. I thought you did. So
yeah. Coming in and seeing this map, and it's funny with now hearing that you aren't familiar with this terrain too. I'm curious to kind of hear what your thought process is. Like, oh shoot, well there's a huge hill with a town on it. I'm lower ground. Like, what's kind of going through your mind right now?
So what I'm looking at is possible cover positions for enemies, and I'm looking at those first before I move on. I'm using this little ditch here to hide my hull as much as possible, but it's not an ideal situation.
Yeah.
There's somebody there. Alright, that's a hit. I gotta move.
Oh, nice. Okay, pop in the smoke. Yeah, I was gonna. Yeah, being the A cap is over there, it's definitely looks like a area.
I was watching that from the high ground, but I wasn't sure how quickly the enemies might get there because it's a longer distance from their spawn. So I figured might be a good idea to try to push forward a little bit.
Yeah.
So this right here is a choke point that's very easily ambushable.
Oh.
This is the sort of thing I wouldn't want to go through in real life, because there's high ground on my left, which I won't be able to aim at easily. There's high ground ahead of me, which I don't have good cover against. So there's a lot of things going on here that make this a bad situation to be in.
You kind of wonder, as War Thunder being the creators of the, Gaijin being the creators of War Thunder, they have 100% control of the maps they're designing and building. And being this is a situation as a real tanker you would avoid, I'm almost wondering if they create the areas that they do because it is more entertaining or dangerous, creates more different types of engagement, or why they...
I believe they do. I think they are doing it on purpose, but I will say I also feel like the map design, it's trying to do too many things at once. There's an enemy right there.
Oh.
So they have to create maps that work for modern warfare as well as for World War II and Cold War, Vietnam era vehicles, and we're talking about all sorts of different equipment levels, which it doesn't really work very well for, because what works for World War II, like the urban combat and, engagements below 1,000 meters, in modern tank context, you're looking at maps where you can frequently engage 2,000 meters and above. That doesn't happen in the game. So they're trying to adapt all these maps for that, and it just doesn't really work out super well. Are you going to come back? He saw me.
Yeah,
he saw me and just
turret.
kept going. He turned and he's just like, he's gone back.
I heard of modern technology, like, tell me if this is a myth or whatever, that if a tank is laser range found, it'll automatically turn its turret in that direction, or it can sense who laser range found it, and like some technologies will just kind of automatically do what it does to attack a target without the crew doing anything. Is that true?
A little bit of science fiction there, but that system does exist. Laser detectors are real. Helicopters have them because a lot of guidance systems, especially like laser guided missiles, can be used against helicopters. So some of them have laser warning systems. Tanks have been more frequently in modern day being equipped with laser detectors as well, just so that it can defeat, if an enemy tank aims at it, it'll know. But it's more for protection against things like Hellfires and laser-guided ATGMs. Not necessarily tanks.
Oh.
Wow. That was a drone.
Oh.
And of course things like that, which you can't do that much against. You don't hear a drone, you don't see it, and then you explode.
Wow. How big of threats are drones in real combat?
So far we don't know, because aggressor countries haven't deployed drones yet.
Okay.
And when we're talking about aggressors, we're talking about, factions such as insurgencies, militias, who may not have access to predator drones, let's say. So the most modern forces right now that are in conflict, of course, and we do have, I do think about them a lot, thoughts and prayers with them, but Ukraine and Russia in conflict right now are the most modern militaries that have been in conflict in recent times.
Yeah.
Even then, we still haven't seen the effect of drones yet, even though Russian forces do have access to similar types of drones. So the question is, it's anyone's guess how effective it's going to be.
Yeah.
What we can do against them. Again, it's hard to say. I think the best defense actually comes from the air itself. Things like electronic warfare aircraft, jammer systems, to prevent drones from operating in the area in the first place. That can be a very big help. But yeah, the actual drone threat that was in Afghanistan at the time were flying IEDs. I know it's a meme because you can do things like that in Squad, but that's a real thing. Little homemade and RC, commercial drones that were fitted with IEDs. That's a very big threat.
Oh, wow.
Because, yeah, they're very hard to see and very hard to hear. but it took a lot of calibration and testing to get the Sea-Wiz, which is a naval point defense weapon with a 20 millimeter cannon on it, to be able to detect airborne IEDs.
Oh, wow.
Um, so they actually have those on the fire bases. There are a few videos floating around TikTok of what happens when they engage those drones. Let me tell you, it's a scary noise hearing that. But for sure, yeah, it's something that is still going. It's the cutting edge of warfare right now, so it's going to take some time before there's proper defenses against something like that. I'm trying to figure out what the York is shooting at right now.
Oh,
There
yeah.
is something in the distance there that he was shooting at.
Oh, yep. It looks like something over to the left there.
There's two tanks. So there's a
Suspected.
position change. And I'm gonna have a look over there again. It's like playing the corner that they talk about in urban ops. Just like, yeah, this ridge line here, just watching that edge.
Would you say that being a tank commander in real life has made you a better, like, gamer, kind of knowing different tactics and situations? Or how would you say that helps, or does it not at all?
I sometimes wonder how effective it really is. Sometimes, yeah, in a tank game, I would say there are some tactics that work, and it does help. And other times, no. I mean, I'm definitely not young anymore. My reflexes aren't there for something like COD. So you kind of take it and or leave it, really. But I would say sometimes, especially when it comes to coordinating and working with a team, there. Oh, hi.
Oh,
I was
wow. Where
wondering
did
what that
that
noise
come
was.
from?
It also doesn't help that he's somehow missing every shot.
How in the world?
So this is where knowledge of the vehicle comes in. If he was aiming, yeah, there you go, slightly to the left, that's where the ammo is.
Ah,
A
there it
slight
is.
inaccuracy on War Thunder's part, by the way. If you hit ammo like that in a Leopard, it wouldn't go off.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure they do it for balancing reasons, but the propellant in the cartridges that we have. But so, yeah, it's an inert propellant, so it requires, they actually fire off using an electric charge. It's electrocuting the rounds, and the propellant casing and, of course, contents burn together. So, yeah, setting it on fire, it'll burn, but pretty slowly. It
Yeah.
won't explode or, cause massive amounts of shrapnel.
Yeah.
So slight inaccuracy there. The crew is pretty safe from an ammo explosion. It also has blowout panels,
Oh, okay.
which people like know. Oh, the Abrams has a blowout ammo rack that protects the crew. Yeah, so does the Leopard. And it's like there is literally a riveted section on top of the or a bolted section on top of the turret that you can see from space.
Oh.
That's a blowout panel, but everyone forgets what that's for.
Ah, your favorite map.
So oh, great. To be fair, Sun City is a fun map when you're playing aircraft. Like weaving the helicopters around the buildings is fun, but from a tank's perspective, it's no. Lots of places to hide from drones, though. I can stay under a bridge and be pretty safe.
Looks like
Um,
there. Oh, nice
there we
shot.
go. I could barely see it moving, but I'll take the 5 pixels I can see. There's another one.
Now, what was your
Okay, there's
strategy
another one.
here?
Oh,
Oh,
he reacted faster than I did. Wow.
holy cow!
How did he turn his guard that quickly with a controller? That's amazing.
That was impressive. We had
He
you.
just flicked around the corner.
I know sometimes we go off that gut feeling and feeling. Is that also the same way of thinking as a real life tank commander, like in battle? Do you think that same way?
So obviously, with the real thing, you're way more organized. So it's not about gut feeling. You want to go this way, you go this way. You kind of look at more your platoon's context. Firstly, as a platoon sergeant, I would look at that. Like where's my team going? How I'm going to support this? Because what most people don't know, actually, a lot of NCOs are the tactician and logistics strategy side of the platoon, whereas the officer is more your tactical planning side of things. So they decide where you go, and you look for how you can support that. So, yeah, you're kind of having to fill in the positions more. So I think that's why I do that in the game a lot.
That's a,
and
yeah.
you're thinking of the needs of the team always. So you're part of the team. You work as a team, and that's kind of the main difference between real life and I guess the game.
When you go into an engagement or a battle and making decisions, looking at the landscape, what are some things that you pay attention for in making your moves from one spot to another? Like, where do I go? What's a good spot? And what should I be avoiding and not going there?
So that's obviously coming down to examining and assessing the terrain. So 100% you want to look at the lay of the land, where your ridge lines are, where your lowlands are. You want to look at obstacles. Like, for example, tanks, yeah, they're well known for being able to cross a lot of things, but if you're looking at a rocky passage that's covered in boulders, you might struggle a little bit and you don't want to slow down going through that, so you might want to plan a different way around it. The same way, the Leopard is very much designed as a ridgeline tank, fighting from a hull down position, so you want to maximize your ability to engage first and accurately from a prepared position like that.
And
So making use of those hilltops and those slopes is definitely what you want to do.
you had mentioned distance, and it got me thinking a lot of War Thunder situations about how there's towns. When you're thinking and approaching a battle situation, should you always try to keep as much distance and try to fight in fields? Or is there ever a situation where urban combat makes sense?
So, and this is something that's still hotly debated in the armor community, by the way, so there's no correct answer for this. But generally speaking, the teaching I had by the time I left was still we avoid urban combat where possible because the restrictions of range and sightlines just don't allow you to engage effectively. The main gun that you have, the L44, it's accurate to around about 4,000 meters and below, so you can engage up to 4 kilometers away. But in an urban environment, you're not going to get that. At the same time, you got to turn this whole turret around. You go through those block by block situations on a grid system with streets. You're going to have to go from pointing forward to suddenly 90 degrees left and right just to scan it. It's just leaving you way too vulnerable. So, in my own experience, it definitely was not something that was viable, but we did develop some tactics that helped to mitigate that a little bit. But just from a general perspective, the better situation is to find an elevated spot outside the urban center and set up a far fire base and shoot at targets from a distance.
Gotcha, makes sense. So when you say ridge lines from a distance, you had mentioned elevated. Is the higher ground always like the advantage on how a tank wants to position himself compared to when fighting others?
So, and this is just for the Leopard context because it's so nicely designed for that. Yeah, an elevated position gives you a lot of advantages in ground combat because against other tanks, APCs, and so on, the higher ground allows you to keep your hull hidden, so hull down position, but it also allows you to see a greater distance compared to without obstruction compared to if you were in the field looking up. So the elevation will always give you that advantage. In the modern context, it's a little bit risky because elevation then it's like lightning rod situation, right? You put yourself on the hilltop, you're going to get struck by lightning.
Yeah.
So, yeah, things like helicopter-mounted ATGMs and things will then become a bigger threat the higher up you are. So there's a trade-off in sort of engaging against ground versus being vulnerable to air, and that's kind of where the tank has to be versatile enough to be able to play both ways.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think War Thunder simulates that in any way, honestly. There's some hull down, but most of the maps are pretty flat.
Now I know in War Thunder it shows like your map in the corner where all your teammates are. Is there something similar to that in real life that a tank has where you kind of know where all your friends are or vehicles on the battlefield at all time, and maybe where your teammates are marking where enemies might be on the map, or how does that work in real life?
So one of the things that coalition forces were using in Afghanistan was something called a Blue Force Tracker, and there are all sorts of variations on this kind of system. Obviously, there's I can't speak on what the Singapore Army actually uses because I don't think that's been declassified. So,
No
but
problem.
essentially, what you're talking about is GPS mapping technology, satellite navigation systems that can then track individual vehicles and squads. So it there are systems that work like that where you can kind of see where your team is. It's nowhere near as accurate as what you'll get in a game, because it's dependent on so many things like satellite availability, weather, obstructions from cover, dust, especially in the desert and snow. You'll get obstructions from all sorts of environmental things like dust storms, or if you get heavy weather and overcast skies, you're not going to see each other as clearly. So you tend not to rely too heavily on that, and the main way that you keep up with where everybody is through communication. So
Gotcha.
you have individual company and platoon commands that will feed back, okay, we've reached this point, we've reached that point, we're holding up in this point, and all of these things is just a flow of information that allows you to keep awareness of where everybody is.
When an enemy is first spotted in real life, what's the plan of action or tactic that goes through your mind that you need to start looking for, and what steps you need to take?
So the main thing is something we call threat assessment. So when you see first contact, you obviously want to identify as quickly as possible what it is. Not maybe to the point of identifying like the sort of make and model of everything, but if you see a tank, you identify tank. And then taking into account what's the biggest threat. So, troops on the ground without ATGMs are obviously a lower threat to a tank than another tank or a missile carrying APC. So you want to definitely take stock of what it is and react accordingly. If the enemy hasn't spotted you yet, so they're not looking in your direction or have no capability of spotting you, you can then take the opportunity to situate yourself to engage them most effectively. So taking cover, hull down, and that sort of thing. But of course, if it's an enemy tank whose gun is pointed in your direction, you want to as quickly fire at that as possible. And we have specific drills for that to engage quickly, and then reorganize the platoon into a firing position.
Before deciding to go from one place to another, like, what classifies as something where, oh, I need to stay here, or no, this would actually make sense or be better to support my team to start moving up into this position?
So one of the things that I look for is a consolidation of that position. So if we're talking, let's say, objective alpha, we've got a couple of APCs moving into there, and they're not being engaged, I'll stay where I am so I can cover from a distance, because they might start getting flanked, versus I go in there and then we all get ambushed together. Other times, if we've engaged a significant enemy and we're not expecting enemies to push that location again, then I'll move in with them and help to consolidate it so they can move forward again. So there's a few different ways I look at it, and it's just very quick, spur of the moment. I don't get it right all the time, but that's sort of my thought process.
And I know in War Thunder, as players, we have to listen to engine sounds a lot to kind of understand where enemies might be, where they are on the map. Now, you had said the best position for the Leopard to be in is that distance, so you might not quite hear it as much, but I'm curious, in a real-life situation, like, are you trained on what different sounds sound like, or what engines might be creating that sound, or maybe what different vehicles sound like when they shoot, so that maybe even though you don't see that target, how you go about engaging or what to do next?
So as compared to War Thunder, obviously we don't hear engine sounds as clearly as all that. For a tank to be heard while you're wearing this crewman's helmet with your own engine running and the whole noise of inside the turret, tanks are very noisy on the inside. In particular, the Leopard, if you ever hear it start up, there's a very persistent whine that sounds like a PC fan that's always on.
Okay.
That's from the stabilization system. So all of the gyroscopes and computers, everything that's running, there's just this whine that's constantly there. So you're really not going to hear much unless it's right next to you. So we're relying on outside intelligence, close quarter support from infantry fighting vehicles and their attached infantry, because they have far more awareness than we do. On top of that, prepared positions, deciding to take those positions in the first place, there's all sorts of reasons, things like overnight stops, resupplies, and so on. Staying in that spot, yeah, you'll set up close quarter protection, camo netting. You've got the loader who'll get up there with his machine gun to kind of do some close quarter protection. There's a few things that we can do to definitely keep an eye out for these things. Of course, something like a 120 firing in the distance, we would hear that definitely. But the diesel engine, maybe beyond 200 meters, you may no longer hear it.
There's like different types of players in War Thunder. You have War Thunder players that know all the stats of all the tanks. I'm curious, as a tank commander, are you trained to know everything, what things are, or how does that work?
So we definitely train for that, and it's one of the things that when I was an instructor, I would actually teach the trainees to do, is to go and research tanks, look up all their basic stats, and try to get an understanding of what those stats mean to you. So it's all well and good to know the armor thickness of the upper glacis of a Leopard 2. Like, you might know that off the top of your head. I can tell you a lot of Leopard 2 commanders, even if you ask them, won't be able to tell you the number off the top of their head, but they know why it's important.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the key difference there, is that you don't need to be able to recite stats, you need to know why it matters. So you need to know, it comes back to threat assessment. That's one of the key things, is if you see two different tanks, you see a T-72 and a T-55, which one do you engage first? They're both tanks, but if you know roughly the stats of either one, which you will brush up on before you go into any combat situation, you will want to do that.
Yeah.
You'll be able to look at that and go, okay, well, the T-72 has more advanced optics, that has a better gun, has better armor. That's the bigger threat.
Yeah.
So take that out first. Whereas a T-55 might fire at you first and miss. It has a very low chance of hitting beyond a certain distance. Its gun is weaker, and so on. So there's lots of different reasons why that would be a lower threat in this situation. So it's more just coming down to the important info and how you apply it versus just knowing it.
So every tank, like as we know in War Thunder, has like their weak spots and their strong points. How do you deal with those when in an engaging combat situation?
Simply put, you don't. So we're talking about a lot of tactics that people employ in games that are very much a game-specific thing. We're talking about things like angling armor, side scraping, reverse side scraping. All of these tactics are not real. So sorry to burst anyone's bubbles there, but yes, that is not a thing. I think the only instance recorded of actual angling armor was done by design and not by tactics. So compared to World War II, of course, where angling would have been important, in a modern context, in any engagement, the general rule that you want to follow is be the first to fire and be the first to hit, because that increases your chances of survival by like 50%.
Oh, wow.
If you hit the enemy first, you have nearly 100% of a chance of survival, for the simple reason that now they're going to have to do damage control, now they're going to have to do damage assessment, it's going to affect their crew morale, it's going to do so many things to that enemy tank that will cause them to have less of a chance of killing you now. It gives you an advantage in such a huge deal, which is why hull down and all these other tactics were developed, because it gives you the best chance of hitting accurately and hitting first. So as for defending yourself against something like that, at the end of the day, if you're hit, you're hit. The main thing is you want to avoid being the first to get hit. So that means making use of the terrain, making sure you're covered and concealed well, and just generally avoiding taking damage in the first place. But if you do take damage, yes, you want to then, as a commander, of course, react to the situation and decide, okay, can I stay in the fight? Can I re-engage? Do I have to get out? And there are drills for that too. We have drills for absolutely everything, from individual crew members being wounded to certain equipment being taken down. For example, we lose stabilization, or we lose the turret control, or even just we get shot at and we don't know where it came from. There's a drill for that too. So we train those drills over and over again so you know how to react as quickly as possible and thus save your tank and crew.
War Thunder has the little animation that always comes up after shooting a tank. You know exactly what you've done, damage-wise, internally to the crew, whatever. In real life, when you're shooting a tank, how do you know that shell didn't ricochet or not penetrate, or like how do you know you actually did damage and what you
So
damaged?
this comes down to what we call BDA, Battle Damage Assessment. There's two forms. The full BDA is after the engagement is done. You take assessment of what damage you did so that you can actually improve your skills. You know, okay, these tanks have certain weaknesses in these places, so on. That's the full BDA, you know, you can learn from. The quick BDA is after each shot. So we take into account, okay, where did it hit? Did we see where the shot went? And there's something called sensing and observation, which is done by a neighboring tank as well. You help each other sense your shots. At the same time, if in a single tank context, the commander and gunner works as a spotter and shooter crew, just like snipers. So the spotter will call out the target and get you sighted in, and the gunner will do his adjustments and make sure he's ready to fire. After he fires, it's the commander's job to then watch that round and see where it lands. And this is, of course, for fire correction. You know, you see dust in front of the tank. Okay, the shot probably landed short. You see, if you fire a heat round and it explodes behind the tank, you know it's over. And that's for shot correction, especially in a non-stabilized situation. But, of course, that also applies to battle damage. So you see where the shot hit. If the 120 rounds all have tracers on them. So seeing a ricochet is pretty obvious. You see big load of sparks and you see the tracer flying off into the sky. Typically, if it flies off pretty quickly, you know, away from the tank at high velocity, it's probably the entire round. But there are instances where the tracer element breaks off and then it just sort of falls to the ground. There's ways to recognize that, which come from training. We do a lot of live fire training, so you can recognize these kinds of things. But as for actual shot impacts, yeah, you will observe the tank and determine whether or not you need to re-engage will be based on, is the tank on fire? Are the crew hatches opening? Are they bailing out? Yeah. These kind of things will give you a clue. I had somebody in the comments actually ask me this exact question before of, how do you know if a tank is knocked out? And a big explosion is usually a pretty good clue. But beyond that, yes, fire, crew bailing out, those are the things you look for.
Okay, that makes sense.
At the same time, yeah, you can see the gun movement too. If the gun is still moving, like it's elevating and the turret's moving, that tank's still active. You shoot it again. But if you see the barrel suddenly droop to the ground or the turret turn in an unexpected direction, chances are the crew's knocked out or that elevation drive or vertical turret gun drive is knocked out and the gun's just going to collapse. That tank's not going to fire at you.
Gotcha. That
so
makes sense.
we have three categories for that, actually. We've got total kill, we've got firepower kill, and mobility kill. So you can kind of guess what those things mean. If you knock a track off, that's a mobility kill. So the tank won't be able to chase after you, so you now have the option of disengaging and moving away. Firepower kill is your barrel's been broken or the turret's come off. That usually is a total kill. But firepower kill can also be sighting systems destroyed and the tank's no longer able to shoot at you. So it's all a matter of reducing that threat to you, really.
I know in War Thunder, when certain crew members are taken out, in real life that's got to be super scary. Is there like a plan of action on what needs to happen and who needs to move to which seat? I know War Thunder sometimes has an order like, oh, the machine gunner is now jumps in the driver's seat or however that works. How does that work in real life when your tank's hit and you need someone in like another seat?
So this is something that actually I think War Thunder most of the time gets right, is the crew succession. In the Leopard especially, I've noticed they do this correctly. So we train for, of course, each situation where a crew member is knocked out. If the loader is down, the commander hops over and goes into the loader compartment. If the gunner is knocked out, the commander becomes the gunner and the loader becomes a de facto spotter and crew commander. In most situations, it's always dependent on who's the closest and who can most easily access that compartment to make that switch. Driver being wounded is usually the most difficult one because he's in a separate compartment by himself. So that usually necessitates stopping the entire tank from engaging. So we have drills for all of this, but typically what you'll see is the commander being the replacer, except in the case of the driver, in which case the gunner becomes the driver and the commander becomes the gunner. Which I've noticed War Thunder gets right pretty much most of the time.
Yeah, wow. No, that's impressive. So everyone's kind of trained on the different roles.
Oh, absolutely. Cross-training is the most important thing. Once you've learned your own trade skill as a gunner, loader, or driver, you cross-train each other's roles. So the most common one is loaders and gunners will cross-train first, so turret crew is interchangeable. followed by gunners and loaders learning to drive. For crewmen, they don't learn everything at once. They learn their trade skill first and cross-train later. Commanders are tasked with learning every trade before they become a commander. So it's a little different.
And this one, I believe, was a question actually from a subscriber. But if you had to use the bathroom, like, where do you go? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not like an RV where you just, hey, I need to go use the bathroom for a second.
Yeah, this is where, things can get a little gross sometimes. Generally, so one of the core phrases in tanks is death before dismount. So you do everything on the tank. You rarely leave the tank at all. So we would cook and eat meals on the tank. We would sleep on the tank. Yeah, you find ways of making it home because it is your home. At least as long as the exercise or deployment lasts, that's your home.
Oh, wow.
So you treat it as such. So yeah, going to the toilet as much as possible. Okay, you don't make a mess of the inside because you don't do that. But yeah, in a combat situation where it's not safe to leave or even open the hatches, then you'll have to get creative. So yeah, you would store things like jars or cans and things like that and just use that, or ammo boxes. In fact, that was one of the things in the movie Fury that I can tell you that's pretty true. You would use things like that. Just whatever container you can get so you don't make a mess of the floor is good enough.
That's hilarious. And then when it comes to training with the tanks, are there like training simulations where you're in tanks and they have fake guns like laser tag and they shoot each other to test what you've learned, or like what do they do?
Oh, absolutely. That was actually one of the newer things that was introduced as a training system using laser guns. Definitely, it compromises the realism a little bit because there are some systems that won't be active from doing that because lasers don't arc like projectiles do. So, yeah, there's a little bit plus and minus to it, but it does add a lot of realism to the training for sure. Being able to actually point the guns and use them. So we do have that. We do fire blanks at each other as well. And of course, use of smoke grenades, thunder flashes, and other simulating pyrotechnics.
Oh,
so
they don't have you play War Thunder to put your skills to the test, huh?
I tried. So I actually did recommend a few tank simulation games like War Thunder to crews that were undergoing training. Just for them to have some homework. It was actually suggested, and we have our own tank simulators. We have those more advanced compartments and so on for training purposes. So you don't really need a video game to do that anymore. But I can definitely say, yeah, War Thunder does add an element of just sort of keeping it relatively fresh, I guess, for people to learn.
And then lastly, my last question here is, how do you think War Thunder compares to real life?
Overall, aesthetically, they get a lot of things right. The vehicles are very realistically modeled most of the time, and they sound very authentic. I commented before about how the sound of the Leopard is exactly what the Leopard's engine does sound like in real life. They got that exactly right. Even the way it revs up, it's 100% accurate. So they do get a lot of those things correct. As far as the actual combat goes, there's plus and minus for it. Some of the equipment is definitely there, but the types of engagements can tend to be a little bit more on the game side than the realistic side, just because of smaller maps, shorter engagement distances, and definitely an emphasis on urban combat, which is not common for tankers to do willingly. So it sits in that nice little niche of being simulator level realistic and being a game. Yes. It's definitely in between both.
And I take it takes longer than 20 or 40 seconds to repair a track or a breach or something, right?
Oh, yeah. Even the most experienced crews, because we do this a lot for just regular maintenance, is breaking and reassembling the track. And especially with the more modern tanks with add-on hull armor and so on, it makes it a lot less accessible. so it's even harder to change. So you would be looking at the fastest crews being able to strip and assemble a track in under 45 minutes.
Oh wow.
Definitely not 30 seconds. 45 minutes is pretty fast. We're talking about removing the entire track and putting it back on.
I was gonna say that's impressive.
But yeah, just reattaching it, like connecting the pieces together, replacing broken pieces. You could do that in about 15 minutes.
Wow. So now we'll go into some questions just from the subscribers. So going through here, we've got one. How hard is it to exactly hit where you want from long distances with a modern tank?
So in the Leopard's context, there's an actual metric for accuracy that the guns have to be built to spec for. We're talking at 1,000 meters, there should be a deviation of no less than 1 centimeter. That's from the factory, and we do sight them in to be that accurate.
Wow.
So hitting where you want to hit up to about 3,000 meters is reasonable. We're looking at deviations up to a maximum of 10 centimeters or more, being within tolerance.
Wow.
But again, in the combat situation, you know, things will change. You may have worse maintenance schedules. You could have battle damage, which will affect your accuracy for sure. But in pristine condition, you can absolutely do that, even while moving.
Wow. While moving, that's impressive.
Yeah, it's quite scary, actually. I don't know if you want to include this part, but it is a funny story. We had an issue with the target systems on our live fire range, where it tracks the location of hits virtually using a computer or sensor. It had difficulty measuring the impact points because the shots were passing through the same hole.
Oh.
So, and these were heat rounds as well, the bigger ones. They were passing through the same impact hole, so it wasn't registering a hit.
Wow, that's incredible.
So we actually had to tell the trainees to shoot at different points of the target board so that it would register.
That is scary.
To this day, there are still target boards that are sectioned and quadranted out so that they actually can hit those quadrants, so we don't reuse the same holes.
That is crazy. I had no idea. Another question here from a subscriber. What is your favorite tank?
Favorite tank? It's got to be the Leopard 2, but that's just my being biased. My own experience and everything that I've learned about it. It's a world-class tank even today. The 2A4 is still a competitive tank in the modern day, and no one will convince me otherwise.
That makes sense. What would you say is your favorite tank feature?
Ooh, this is a tough one. Favorite feature, sorry, in what context? Like equipment or just quirks in general?
That's good. All he says is, what's his favorite tank well, he says features, so maybe you can mention a couple. He says, for example, the computer that calculate the lead for moving targets, and etc.
So obviously the fire control system of the Leopard is one of my favorite things. It's amazing how accurate it is using technology that was from the 80s. So it's just incredible that you can have something be this accurate. There's a famous video of a German Leopard being tested with a full stein of beer on its muzzle. And it's driving over a road course with a suspension tester on it. And that beer does not spill once.
Are you serious?
So, yeah, you can actually find that on YouTube. That video, if you want to include that in this, it's incredible. Yeah, the beer does not spill.
That is incredible. I'll have to check that out. That is wow.
It's one of the best features. As for any feature added to a tank, I mean, the water boiler in Challengers, that's got to be one of the best ones because yeah, obviously Singapore being an Asian country, one of the most popular midnight snacks is instant noodles. So having something that could boil water for you inside the tank, now that's really impressive. I would like to have that. Because we had those camping stoves or even just a tin with solid fuel in it to cook stuff like that. that was a rare treat out in the field, I'll tell you that.
Another question here. On average, how much time do you dedicate to maintaining the vehicle?
It's most of the time, I would say. So when you're not in the field, but day to day, yeah, most of the time you're going in there doing your regular checks and maintenance all the time. We're pulling through the gun barrel after every firing. We're washing the vehicles every other day. We always do it, and it's not because the vehicles are maintenance heavy. It's more about building that bond with the crew and the tank, to go out there and touch the vehicle as often as possible.
Oh, God.
One of the sayings is, somebody who's out of touch with their platform as a tanker would say that you need to go and touch the tank. In the same way that we tell people to go touch grass, you're going to tell them to go touch the tank. Because, yeah, they clearly haven't met their platform for a while.
And then next question, is tanking really as cool or fun as it is portrayed? Lots of video games and movies paint tanking as this exciting experience, but they'd like to know if that's really true.
I mean, it all depends on the person. I definitely say it was an amazing experience. To quote Fury, it was the best job I ever had. But it is an experience, and for some people it may not appeal. I will say that, because you got to think about it this way. You're in a big metal box, sometimes in stinking hot weather, with guys who stink just as bad as you do, for days on end. And you're going to have to deal with that. If you're a tank gunner, especially if you have a commander as tall as I am, I'm 6'1", you're going to have to deal with my knees being on your shoulders most of the time. There's not a lot of room. It's very cramped inside there. I think the only exception would maybe be the Merkava tanks, the Israeli ones that are quite big on the inside. By comparison, the Leopards and Abrams are not comfortable places to be. They are very cramped. So,
wow.
yeah, you got to get used to being in a small space with people who smell bad. But, at the end of the day, it's whether you like what comes along with that or not.
Another question, do you give your tanks names so everyone knows which ones belong to which crew?
So, in our unit, we didn't have official nicknames for vehicles, just because when we first started, there was a limited supply of vehicles, so we kind of had to share them a little bit until the new tanks came in. So, they didn't really get that sort of bond to that level. So they just got offhand nicknames, which sometimes were not safe for YouTube. But the armored infantry actually did have this quite a while back. I don't think it's a tradition that carries on anymore. But if you have a look at the Bionics series of infantry fighting vehicles, so they had names painted on their tanks, on their APCs. So they did have nicknames for them, but that's also because each platoon stuck with their vehicle for that long.
Yeah.
They just kind of started doing that. We would give each other nicknames, of course, and of course over the comms, each commander might have a call. Well, definitely would have a call sign, but sometimes a nickname inside the platoon. So that's about as far as it goes. The vehicles themselves didn't really get names.
Are vehicles that only use autocannons as effective as they are in game, or are they just annoying?
Oh, that's a tough one, because I don't have that much experience with the 25 and 30 mil Bushmasters that the Bionics has had.
Yeah.
But they are interesting because the APDS style rounds that they do have are rated to penetrate at least the side of most modern MBTs to a certain degree. So I would say that they are definitely a threat still. But in most situations, IFVs are capable of carrying ATGMs. At least the troops that they carry might have them. So if you've got a warrior, for example, the British IFV, if it's not mounting a Milan ATGM on its turret, it's probably got troops that have NLAWs, so it's still going to be just as dangerous.
A question here that may kind of tie into what we were just talking about, but how confident are you in the Leopard's armor to save you from another tank shell?
I would say, personally, it's about a 70 to 80%, mainly because you're depending on the armor to save you from taking that hit that you really shouldn't want to hit in the first place.
Yeah.
So the Leopard, as far as armor goes, now this is just based on the 2A4. The 2A4 variant, it was good for its time, but modern armor defeating weapons such as shape charges, heat rounds can still be a big threat, and the tank was designed with hull down tactics in mind. So that being said, while I am confident that it would protect me against a lot of older or equivalent tank ammunition, that's not to say it would be as effective against more modern stuff.
Yeah. No, makes sense. I mean, because different countries could use different types of tanks. Sorry,
Oh, absolutely.
I think my kids are in the background. Apologize for that. I am right next to a kid's playroom with the door shut, and you can probably hear it.
Oh yeah,
I sometimes get
kids are just
comments.
loud.
I know.
The most common question I get is which country I'm from, because the Leopard is exported to so many countries that it could be anything.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because I told people I was a Leopard commander and nobody knew where I was from. I'm like, oh yeah, that's not obvious, is it? Like if you say Abrams, then you know, okay, it's the US or Australia. That's about it.
Well, hey, it was definitely an honor, Panzer. Love talking to you. I wish you the best with your channel. I think it'll really do well. I've already seen the kind of the success with so early on, getting thousands of views, making great content. Keep it up, and it was definitely great getting to meet and get to know you, Panzer.
Oh, thank you for having me, and I definitely really enjoyed it. It's always fun talking to people and meeting new people. So I definitely enjoyed that, and yeah, just thanks for the opportunity as well, just to make a video together too.